Welcome to the deep dive, where we really try to cut through the noise.
Get right to the heart of things.
Exactly. And today, we're diving into a pretty fascinating stack of sources.
Yeah, they bring together two areas that seem, well, miles apart at first glance.
Right. Our, modern digital habits, screens, all that.
And in these very old, very deep traditions around marriage.
So our mission for this deep dive,
Yeah.
what is it? We're trying to pull out those crucial nuggets of knowledge, right?
Yeah, the key insights. We want to understand how we navigate choices in our lives. Big ones, small ones.
And look for those sort of aha moments.
Where you see the connection between, one person's experience and these bigger, broader patterns.
Okay, so let's unpack this first part. The sources kick right off with something I think everyone gets. Social media.
Oh, yeah. Very relatable. People admitting, quite candidly, they spend hours every day just scrolling.
Instagram, Facebook, you name it. And they use this phrase, a bit of an addiction.
And they see the impact, don't they? Things like productivity at work, taking a hit.
Or time they used to spend, I don't know, reading or working on hobbies. It's just gone.
What's really striking, though, is how fast it goes from my problem to, well, everyone's problem.
Yeah, affecting a lot of people, especially students, the sources say.
So it's not just, one person doom scrolling. It's a societal trend, a big shift in, well, attention.
And here's where it gets really interesting, I think. The sources share this specific story, an anecdote about a student named Anna.
Right, Anna, described as brilliant.
Yeah, doing really well in certain parts of the exam, really smart.
And didn't pass overall.
And the potential reason cited, spending a lot of time on social media.
Posting photos every day, chatting with her online friends.
So beyond just the time it takes, what does this tell us about, the connection between these digital habits and focus, actual concentration?
Well, it really begs the question, doesn't it? When we spend hours and hours online, what are we actually getting from it?
The sources are pretty blunt. A few likes, maybe some comments.
A temporary high. That's the phrase used.
So if you connect that to the bigger picture, it feels like, well, a kind of psychological trick almost.
It does. These platforms, they're tapping into our basic social needs, right? But they create this dopamine loop.
Right. Feels like connection, but maybe isn't.
Exactly. It mimics real connection without maybe delivering the depth. So we have to ask, is social media really a tool that should add value?
Or is it starting to, take over, compromise our ability to engage more deeply?
It's a critical question.
But the good news is the sources don't just leave us there feeling bad about scrolling.
No, they offer some actual strategies, practical things.
Like trying to set a daily time limit. Has anyone ever actually stuck to those?
Well, maybe. They also talk about digital detoxes, stepping away completely for a week or two.
Get some perspective back.
Right. And being more intentional when you are online, spending it wisely.
Like following accounts that inspire you or teach you something new, not just noise.
Yeah, making it additive, not subtractive.
Yeah.
There's even this idea of a social media detox challenge with friends or family.
Like a group effort.
Exactly. So the core insight seems to be finding a balance.
Okay. Between staying connected and not letting it control our lives.
Comes back to being intentional, doesn't it?
Yes.
Conscious about how we interact online.
Intentionality. Okay, hold that thought because now we pivot.
Right, from managing these daily digital choices.
To maybe the biggest choice many people make, finding a life partner.
And the sources jump right into that classic, often heated debate. Love marriage versus arranged marriage.
Yeah, what's compelling here is how they lay out the arguments for both sides.
Not just the arguments, but the concerns too. The strengths and the weaknesses of each approach.
They're both trying to solve the same fundamental human need, right? How do you find a stable, supportive partnership?
Exactly.
So for love marriages, the arguments are pretty familiar to many of us. Freedom.
Right. The freedom to choose your partner.
And the idea that you know them well before getting married. You've built something already.
And the belief, maybe the hope, that if both people are committed, it leads to strong relationships.
Sure. But then conversely, the case for arranged marriages, it highlights different things.
Yeah, like how families help choose a partner, someone who's seen as compatible.
It's framed as maybe a more traditional and secure approach, less volatile.
Perhaps. And there's this idea that love and understanding can grow over time. It doesn't have to be instant chemistry.
And crucially, they often come with this built-in family support system.
Right, like a safety net almost, helping couples through the inevitable challenges.
Okay, but, and there's always a but, isn't there? The
Yeah.
sources point out the risks, too, for both.
Absolutely. For love marriages, the big one is that love can be blind.
Meaning you might ignore red flags,
Yeah.
get swept away.
Precisely. And for arranged marriages, the worry is, well, what if you just don't click?
Yeah, what if your family chooses someone you don't really connect with? Or worse, someone you actively don't like?
That's a huge risk. So it pushes us to think about the deeper implications, especially around things like focus, long-term well-being.
And the sources connect this back, interestingly, with another anecdote, potential distractions in love marriages.
Yeah, another story about a brilliant college friend. Similar to Anna in a way.
Okay. What?
Well, she was in a relationship. It ended badly, a breakup, and apparently she completely changed.
How so?
Stopped studying, lost her focus. Sounds quite serious. Even had some really dark thoughts.
Wow. That's heavy.
And this experience, this story, is presented as a kind of argument for why arranged marriages might be seen as a safer path.
Safer how? Because the family is involved.
Because families tend to look at the practical stuff, right? Compatibility, background, values. They're trying to almost de-risk the emotional side of things.
Like removing the potential for that kind of devastating distraction we saw with the social media example, too.
It's an interesting parallel, isn't it? Managing emotional volatility, managing digital distractions. Both require, perhaps, a certain kind of structured approach for some people.
So after weighing all this, the freedom, the risks, the family support, the potential distractions, what's the conclusion? What does this mean for you, the listener, trying to figure this out?
Well, the sources are pretty clear. There's no one-size-fits-all answer here.
Not surprising, really.
No, it really depends on the individuals, what they're actually looking for.
And crucially, they mention maturity, how mature they are.
Yeah, that point about maturity and self-awareness, it really seems to loop back to what we were saying about social media, doesn't it?
That idea of being intentional.
Exactly. Whether it's that small daily decision to pick up your phone, check notifications.
Or this absolutely monumental decision about who you spend your life with.
Both seem to demand a high level of self-awareness, intentionality, if you want them to genuinely serve your well-being and your goals.
The criteria you prioritize, whether it's that instant spark or family compatibility or something else that shapes the whole journey.
It really does.
So, wow, we've covered a lot of ground here. From the subtle ways our screens are shaping us every day.
Right, those micro choices.
To these huge, life-altering decisions about forming lifelong bonds. Seemingly different worlds, but maybe more connected than we think.
If you pull back and look at the bigger picture,
Yeah.
it really highlights how deeply intertwined our daily habits and our long-term choices really are.
And how they connect to our overall well-being, our success, however we define that.
It's a reminder, isn't it? Whether we're talking about a digital connection or a lifelong commitment, that critical thinking and that word again, intentionality,
Right.
they're just key.
So thinking about all this, what really stands out to you from this deep dive? What's the main takeaway?
Good question. And maybe here's a final thought, something provocative for you to mull over later.
Okay, lay it on us.
Consider the amount of conscious effort, the sheer intentionality many people apply to choosing a life partner, thinking about values, compatibility, future goals.
Right, a lot of thought goes into it, ideally.
Okay, now compare that to how much conscious effort we apply to managing our daily digital lives, our relationship with these devices, these platforms.
Yeah.
Are we equally committed, to careful consideration in both areas? Probably not, for most of us.
That's a challenging thought.
So maybe the question is, what can we learn from the, let's say, traditional wisdom around choosing a partner? That careful vetting, that focus on long-term compatibility.
And apply that to our modern social media habits.
And maybe vice versa. What lessons about connection, or perhaps even about distraction from our digital lives, might inform how we approach relationships?
Interesting connections to keep exploring.
Definitely food for thought.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Keep exploring, keep questioning.
And keep connecting those dots.